Welcome back to our virtual forum for the CD1 special election in Rhode Island. This is the second and final session. As mentioned in session one, the lineups were decided as randomly as possible. The only specific criteria we had for candidates to meet in order to participate was just getting the 500 signatures to qualify on the ballot. We have 6 candidates in this session: Mr. Gabe Amo, Ms. Stephanie Beauté, former state representative Spencer Dickinson, who is tuning in via phone, Providence City Councilman John Goncalves, Lieutenant Governor Sabina Matos, and State Senator Anna Quezada. If you missed the first session and you're tuning into this one, the moderators are myself and Ryan Lukowicz, who will be to the right of me on the screen. We're going to keep answers to base questions to around a minute and a half to make sure we can get through as many topics as possible. Follow-ups will be more brief and on a case-by-case basis, depending on the answers Ryan and I are hearing. We want this to remain as civil as possible, but we do understand in the case of a candidate directly attacking one another, we will allow a rebuttal on that case. But if it gets circular, the conversation becomes circular or out of hand, Ryan and I will interject. Each candidate will also get a 1-minute closing statement. As in session one, Ryan, start things off with our first question.
Thank you, Raymond, for that great introduction. And I also want to say to the candidates, we expect this to be roughly an hour and a half. I know we're getting a late start due to Rep. Dickinson's tech issues, but we would appreciate if candidates could stay. We will be mindful of the time and adjust as needed. But I'm going to start with the opening question. Mr. Amo, you are first for this, as we did it in alphabetical order, and then it will be random throughout. So a different person will start every time. I think you'll get the gist. But the question is, what differentiates you from your other opponents in this crowded field, and why are you uniquely qualified to represent the residents of Rhode Island's 1st Congressional District? Mr. Amo, take it away.
Well, thank you. First off, thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Ray, for putting this together. And I think you got everybody going and getting the conversations rolling around the 1st District. So I'm grateful to you. I think there is a great field. It's a diverse field, as evidenced by the faces I see on the screen now. And I think everybody running is a good person and has great motives. And you know, when I look at my differentiation from other candidates, I start with my story being very actually familiar to Rhode Islanders. I grew up as a poor kid in Pawtucket, the son of 2 West African immigrants. And what sets me apart is the experiences that I've had because of that foundation and my ability to get things done. Because of a good education and hard work, I've had the opportunity to work at the heights of government. Worked at the State House as a senior aide to Governor Raimondo, and in the White House for 2 different presidents, President Obama and President Biden, most recently as the Deputy Director of Intergovernmental Affairs. And in that role, I worked on behalf of the president to help communities shattered by gun violence, coordinating the federal response in the aftermath of extreme weather and other major disasters, and working to help the state and local governments access the funds from the Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act. So I think our state deserves experience that can deliver for Rhode Islanders on day one, and that is what I think differentiates me from the field.
Thank you. Ms. Beauté.
Thank you, gentlemen, as well, for once again coordinating this. I'm sure that there'll be plenty of thank yous all around. To answer the question about what differentiates me from the candidates here, my background isn't in politics, it's in technology. And so if you're looking for an established or career politician, then I'm not your person. I'm a self-starter. I've worked really independently, and also being able to collaborate with large groups and work for multi-billion-dollar companies. One of the things that makes me key as an asset in this case is really being able to look at a problem and looking how to piece apart that and come up with resolutions that work along both sides of the aisle. And so that there's multiple ways to get to a particular solution, and I'm more solution-based focused. I really like to tackle and solve problems and not really a party of the mundane nuances of, you know, touting party politics. I don't think that Rhode Islanders benefit from that. I think that Rhode Islanders are suffering. I am suffering as a result of that, and that's why I put my hat in the race. Working as a single mom, I unfortunately didn't have, you know, the best of means. I went to a public school, Gilbert Stewart, which is being shut down, right? Hope High School, which is also trying to be transitioned into a charter school. I've been a part of the many school takeovers. I didn't get to go to, the schools across the private schools along the way and make my way up the ladder with connections. I had to work 3 times as hard. And I've seen it with a mom who is a CNA and still a CNA to this day, working 2 to 3 jobs to make ends meet. And that hasn't changed for Rhode Islanders. It hasn't changed 10 years. It hasn't changed 20 years. And it's not going to change by electing the same people to fill in these spaces. And so I think what I present is a fresh breath of fresh air. And one of the unique spaces is that in Congress, I don't think we solve our problems by sending more politicians to DC. In fact, I think that that's part of the problem. I think that's part of a broken system when you put in broken pieces to try to fix something.
Miss
That's
Beauty,
broken.
we're not timing you, but we do need to be cautious. So can you do another 10 to 20 seconds?
Sure, thank you. But I don't think that we solve those problems by putting in a broken system with more broken patterns. And so having a new, fresh perspective on that is the new unique change that I bring to DC. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dickinson.
I just want to point out at the beginning that I have served 12 years in the state legislature. And during those 12 years, I was majority leader for 4 years. And for 8 years, I lived in the 1st district. I now live in the 2nd district. We put that right out there. When I'm your congressman, I will be living in the 1st district. One of the things that characterized me in the legislature is that I do my homework and I understand the numbers. And to me, if it's going to work, it has to be real. And I'm afraid that a lot of what we see in politics in Rhode Island is showbiz. Stuff that's supposed to look good but isn't going to work. And one standard I have for any legislation, and there are many topics, many issues that need to be addressed, it's got to work. I'm a home builder, and you can't look at a hole in the ground and expect something to happen there unless you make it happen. And it's got to be something that you plan, and it's got to get done. And what I see when I look around me in politics is things don't get done. People do a lot of showbiz. They don't produce what they say they're going to produce. They say one thing and vote differently, and I can give you examples on the House floor. It happens a lot. So what I bring to it is, for me, you're going to get the straight story, and I'm not even going to propose it unless it's something that I believe could work.
Thank you, Mr. Dickinson. Up next, Mr. Goncalves.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Goncalves, and I'm a 2-term city councilman serving as a senior deputy majority leader representing the East Side and downtown in the city of Providence. I'm running for Congress to put people first. What makes me different is, first, I'm a teacher. I'm the only candidate on this stage who has spent nearly the last decade as an elementary school teacher, and I will get big things done to improve childhood education for our children and families. The story of struggle and resilience here in Rhode Island is my story. I'm the son of immigrants who grew up in a single parent household. And as a teacher, I believe that your zip code shouldn't determine your destiny. Despite growing up in poverty, I was lucky enough to get a good education from Providence Public Schools to Wheeler to Brown University. And additionally, I'm one of the only few candidates on this stage who was born and raised in this district. And aside from a few years in Minnesota, I've lived in the district for nearly 30 years. I'm truly rooted in community as a longtime teacher and public servant. And my track record as a municipal elected official speaks for itself. I'm here to actually get big things done, and I've got a strong track record of legislative experience and success, having been the lead sponsor on dozens and dozens of pieces of past legislation at the local level, and I've solved thousands and thousands of constituent service issues on the ground. I'm responsive, I'm reliable, I'm effective, I get things done, and I know what it means to struggle. I've lived the experiences that many people just talk about. I'm working class. I've suffered from food insecurity. I grew up in poverty. As a Black man, I've faced discrimination. This work is not theoretical for me. And as the underdog, I will always fight for the underdog. And as your next congressman, I will fight to bring federal funding back to Rhode Island. I will fight for economic opportunity, education, and an equitable Rhode Island. I will fight for a green future, reproductive rights, and fight to end gun violence. I will fight to hold special interests, big oil, the gun lobby, and big pharma.
Mr. Goncalves, we're going to get to some of those issues.
Fight.
Can you wrap it up?
Absolutely. I will fight for our children, families, and seniors as I've done on the ground. So I am ready on day one. Join me at johnG4congress.com. I love Rhode Island. I hope to earn your support, and I hope that ultimately you'll send a teacher to Washington.
Thank you. Ms. Matos.
Thank you. Thank you so much. My name is Sabina Matos. I have been serving as the Lieutenant Governor for the state of Rhode Island for the past 2 years. I have been in elected office for more than 12 years already. I started at the local level at the Providence City Council. I was the past president of the Providence City Council. That's the role I had before serving as Lieutenant Governor. I'm running for Congress because right now there are so many things on the line. Right now, we have to make sure that we send someone to Congress that's going to fight for a woman's right to make their own decision about their reproductive freedom, to make sure that they make their own decision about their body, to make sure that the next generation, my daughter's generation, doesn't have less rights than I do. That's one of the reasons I'm running for Congress. I'm running for Congress also because we need a strong voice in Washington fighting for gun safety legislation that's going to protect our children. That when our children go to school and we don't have to be worried about, is this the day that you're going to get a call letting you know that something happened and there was a shooting? So that's another reason why I'm running for Congress. And I'm running for Congress to have a strong voice for Rhode Islanders. Now more than ever, we have to make sure that we have someone in Congress that continue the work that Congressman Cicilline started, and continue working on making sure that we have a strong voice representing Rhode Island, but also fighting for democracy and fighting for the rights of everyone, a woman's rights, LGBTQ rights, and making sure that we don't end up losing rights, but instead expanding our rights. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to be here in this forum.
Last but not least, Ms. Quezada.
Oh, Ms. Quezada, you're muted.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for having me here this afternoon. My name is Ana Quezada. I've been a state senator for the last 8 years almost. One of the things that I'm different from the other ones is my experience. I passed many legislation in the State House to make the people of Rhode Island have a better life. One of the things, I'm not a yes person. I say what I have to say. I'm different, and when I have to go against the leadership, I've been against the leadership when it's the right things to do for the people of Rhode Island. I'm a regular Rhode Island like you. I'm not rich, I'm not connected, I'm not politically connected, my family is not either. Then that makes me a completely different person than the rest of my friends. I'm somebody who believes in integrity. That's why I released my tax return, and I'm asking the rest to do the same. I'm a person who, as what you see, I would fight. I'm a fighter. I fight for Rhode Island. I fight for everything I had in life. As a welfare mom, when I moved to Rhode Island in 1990, I was fighting for my 2 daughters, and I was a welfare mom for a little while until I went back to school, and I was able to get a GED, and I was able to go back to school and be a social worker, on weekends, going to college on weekends. I'm a hardworking mom. I'm a hardworking person, and I would not be a yes person in Washington when I get there.
Thank you, Ms. Quezada. I will now pass it to Raymond for our first topic.
Thank you, Ryan. First topic is addressing gun violence. The issue of addressing gun violence is without a doubt one of the top issues on voters' minds in this district heading into the special election. Starting off with Ms. Beauté, if elected to Congress, what measures would you support to reduce gun violence, and how would you get it done in the GOP-led House?
And candidates have 60 seconds to answer these.
Great question. One of the big things with addressing gun violence, I think that we need to tie in mental health and create safety measures around that. So one thing that I would like to see us do in passing legislation is that for any person who is looking to get a firearm, that they would be tied in with their physician. So a physician signing off to make sure that you have no issues with suicide risk, that you are not a risk and a danger to others. I think that is a big piece, because what we're seeing is folks reacting, unfortunately, to dire circumstances and either taking a weapon out on themselves or, worst case, hurting other people. And so the way that we can address that is by making sure that we tie that into a health and safety measure as part of our gun reform. Another piece is really having strong gun legislation so we don't get weapons in the hands of people that should not have it. So folks who have access to firearms, one big piece also is making sure that they understand the requirement of gun storage and safety, making sure that we have comprehensive reform around that and that there are penalties, criminal penalties, if a child or someone young has been able to take a hold of that firearm. So in order to be able to prevent gun safety, to be able to prevent attacks on folks with guns, I think that we need to do our due diligence with creating a wraparound service with mental health, storage safety, and making sure that people who have access to guns understand the penalties therein. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beauty. Just a quick follow-up, very brief. The big ticket item that a lot of Democrats are hoping for is a national assault weapons ban. Where do you stand on that?
I'm 1000% for that.
Got
Absolutely.
it. Next up for this, same question to Mr. Dickinson. If elected to Congress, what measures would you support to reduce gun violence, and how would you get it done in the GOP-led House?
Well, you know, the first thing I want to point out is that everything we're doing is not working. And when I see that happening, it gets my attention. And I think part of the reason that that's the situation today is that there's a lot of propaganda out there. Propaganda is essentially picking words that play to the emotions instead of logic. And that's what everybody's doing. It's all about show business. I would like to ask those other candidates, how many of them joined the Army voluntarily, served in the Army, and spent maybe hundreds of hours on the firing range? The U.S. government decided that they wanted me to learn how to shoot, and I spent 14 weeks at a minimum on the firing range, plus a few other examples, learning how to shoot, learning what a weapon was and what it's all about. My two sons both volunteered for the Army. They didn't get drafted, and they know how to shoot. There are a lot of people in this country that consider firearms extremely important, and I've heard, I haven't counted them, but there are 320 million firearms. When I hear somebody bring up the possibility of collecting all the firearms or collecting some of the firearms, I think I'm hearing from somebody who's insincere. In other words, what they have is a proposal that they know won't work. You are not going to collect 320 million firearms. You need a better plan.
So, Mr. Dickinson, I just want to stop you there for a moment. Is there any measures that you would support, whether it be safe storage laws, universal background checks, assault weapons ban? Are there any that you could see yourself supporting?
Those are all, the first two are relatively good ideas. The whole use of the term assault rifle or assault weapon takes, you know, any gun owner, anybody who knows anything about firearms considers that a distraction. That's not a correct word. You shouldn't use it because it's dishonesty. And as long as you've got hundreds of millions of firearm owners who consider that your entire discussion is based on dishonest terminology, they're not going to trust you. They're going to fight it every step of the way. And in Congress, that's not
no on
work.
The assault weapons ban, just so I have it correct.
That's the wrong word, and I would attempt to. There's a lot of things that we can do, but I think what we should do is to gain the confidence of the firearm owners that we're not out to take their weapons from them.
Okay, I'm just going to stop. I'm just going to stop you right there, Mr. Dickinson. Mr. Dickinson, I'm just going to stop you right there. I'm going to tie in Mr. Goncalves on this topic. If elected to Congress, what measures would you support to reduce the gun violence?
Sure. So the issue of gun violence is personal to me. As a fourth grade teacher, I have to spend time teaching my kids about active shooter drills instead of teaching them about multiplication and division. I know people who have been ravaged by gun violence. Those families can't be limited to thoughts and prayers. Enough is enough. We need to stand up to the gun lobby and the NRA. That's why in my role as chair of state legislative affairs on the city council, I've urged our General Assembly to pass gun safety legislation to keep us safe. I support Gavin Newsom's 28th Amendment to the United States Constitution to enshrine gun safety laws. It's why I support a federal mandate on universal background checks and red flag laws, safe storage laws, and why I support the banning of the purchase of assault weapons. If you want to exercise your Second Amendment rights to responsibly hunt geese, be my guest. but weapons of war have no business in our community.
Thank you, Mr. Goncalves. Ms. Matos, same question. If elected to Congress, what measures would you support to reduce gun violence?
So gun violence is something I have faced early on serving in the Providence City Council. I remember one of the first things I had to do was organize a vigil for a young girl that was killed just while she was attending a family gathering outside of their house. I have seen how that is taking a toll in our community, and I have seen how it's affecting real people in our community around us. Going to Congress, the first thing I'm going to do is work to make sure that we do everything we can to remove assault weapons from our streets. That would be my #1 priority. I know there is plenty of people that want to see this happening, not just the Democratic Party members, but there's also Republicans that would like to be part of this solution. So we'll go to Congress, and I'm going to go there to work with whoever is willing to work with me to make sure that we make this a reality. We have to finally get assault weapons out of our streets. So that would be my #1 priority.
Lieutenant Governor, can I just ask you a follow-up to that?
Sure.
Do you know of any Republicans in the House who support something like an assault weapons ban? Because from what I've heard, there haven't been any. And I mean, I know you've probably been in touch with people who are in that chamber right now. So what indicates to you that no compromise is needed on this issue?
So right now what we have is two strings. We have the people that are holding corners and are afraid to speak publicly and say that they would be willing to do something like this. A good example we have, you saw actually Congressman Cicilline telling us the story about how he was able to get bipartisan legislation passed, but he had Republican votes that were going to vote with him, but he was not able to share that information ahead of time. I'm pretty sure there are plenty of Republicans that would be willing to sign up to this legislation.
Interesting. Thank you.
Ms. Quezada, same base question. If elected to Congress, what measures would you support to reduce gun violence?
Well, gun violence to me is a very personal. In 2020, my brother got killed in Georgia. And when my brother got killed, he was killed in front of his youngest son, who was 7 years old at that time. And, I know how my family went through this situation. And I know many families in my district who lost the kid through gun violence. Then for me, it's something that's very personal. I know how heartbroken we was when that happened to Eddie. And I said to you, I would do everything I have, and I've been doing it in the State House. I've been co-signing all the common sense legislation that came through the State House, like controlling magazine, the red flag one, the gun. We didn't pass it, unfortunately, this time, but we have the legislation about the storage, safe storage for gun, and so many other legislation that I've been able to support in the Senate since I've been at Senate. Then for me, this would be a #1 priority, and I would definitely think our children need to be safe. They need to feel safe when they go to school or when they go to the mall or when they go to anywhere. Then that's one of the things that I would work for. And I can guarantee you that with the experience that I bring with me, I will be able to connect with other legislation to do the same. And I know that's going to be hard because we are the minority right now in Congress. But I think we need to bring people who can tell them your own experience, what we went through as a family when you lost a lot of somebody close to you.
Thank you, Ms. Quezada. Mr. Amo, same question. If elected to Congress, what would you support to reduce gun violence?
Yeah, this is a critical issue, and we in this country should have freedom from this threat. And so when I was working in the White House for President Biden just 3 months ago when I left, I was the person responsible for picking up the call and calling a mayor, calling a local elected official to express our condolences on behalf of the president, but two, seek out ways to help a community heal. And time again, the thing I heard was we need legislative action. And so it's one of the big reasons I'm running for Congress, for all those conversations with communities, and you name it, Buffalo, Uvalde, and so on and so forth, Highland Park. These are circumstances where I've been involved. And so, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I think banning assault weapons in this country, carrying on Congressman Cicilline's legacy is so important. And to go into the legislation and make sure that there's no ambiguity on the types of weapons we're talking about. We are talking about assault style weapons, weapons of war that have no place out there, and we can get to specificity there. Certainly building upon the progress of the Bipartisan Safer Community Act, making sure that we're investing in research at the CDC for gun violence prevention. And then the last thing here is really important. I think we need to go at universal background checks vigorously, because actually one of the lead co-sponsors is a Republican, Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania. There is a moment here that I think we can embrace Republicans to bring them across the finish line on universal background checks, because it's vastly or widely rather popular across the partisan divide. But I think that the bottom line here is we need to be free from the threat of gun violence. And I think it's going to be one of the most important things that I'd be able to work on it if elected to Congress.
Thank you, Mr. Amo. There was a question that Mr. Dickinson posed in his first answer to the first question on this topic, and I just wanted to give anybody a chance to address it because he did ask it to all the candidates. Was there anybody who wanted to address that? I believe his question was, did anybody serve or shoot a firearm previously?
I did. I wanted to address it. And so actually at Hope High School, I was in the ROTC. I didn't serve in the Army or serve in military in that sense, but I do have family who has served, who are current Green Berets, who've gone to West Point. I have family who are in the Navy. I have great friends who served in Iraq and Afghanistan, who've done several tours. And so when I talk about gun safety and I talk about assault weapon bans, it's not being disgenuine. It's really talking to people who have seen the hardship of being in war and doing combat battle and seeing the gravity of what that leaves communities, right? So when we go to war, it's one thing, but that shouldn't be in our communities. And when we talk about, doing more research on gun violence, I think that it's clear what the issues are, and gun violence is a plague in not only just America, but also in our poor communities. And so I don't think that there's any more research to be done on this piece. I think what needs to be done here is really tying in mental health with being able to access a gun, making sure that we get guns off of the streets. These keep happening in a lot of our poor Black and Brown communities. When I was a little girl, Jenny Rivera died 4 blocks down from where I lived. And I remember the conversation of my mom because she was washing dishes in her kitchen and happened to see a murder. I was a little girl at that time. And the same time that there was a ceremony re-celebrating the park opening, another gunshot happened, killing in the neighborhood that I grew up in as a kid. So this is not disgenuine. I have lost friends to gun violence. And I've seen other people who have been in situations where they're forced to pick up a gun or they will be shot in these poor communities. And so this isn't disgenuine. We need to do more. And I'm really disappointed in that response.
Mr. Dickinson, anything last you want to add very briefly? Oh.
Yeah, I do. The last few candidates that talked, almost all of them, if not every one of them, used the term assault rifle and weapon of war. Once the responsible gun owner hears you use that word, he knows you're not even speaking the same language, because the words have meaning. There is
Mr.
no
Dickinson, just a heads up,
rifle.
we're gonna try to keep this brief, so 15 seconds, please.
There's no assault rifle on the streets of the United States. And the true answer to this, there are a lot of good suggestions, and we've heard some of them, including mental health and issues like that, dads in homes. But the thing is that until we convince the opponents that we understand the language and we know what a gun is, the difference between an assault rifle and a hunting rifle, there is a difference. They're not going to support it. And what I will do in Congress is I'll have those conversations, and those people will understand that we're not out to get them, and we'll get a result.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dickinson. All right, very briefly, Ms. Matos, and we're moving on like 10 seconds at most.
What we have to do is to fix the broken Second Amendment right now. We do have in our streets weapons like the AR-15. that is a reality. Those are assault weapons. And we cannot ignore also the lack of regulation that we have on people buying guns and how we're affecting not only gun violence here in America, but also in other countries. If you look at the numbers of gun violence issues, assaults that happen in countries like Dominican Republic or even Canada, most of the time when they use a weapon, a gun, it was purchased in the United States and it was purchased legally. So we're having an effect not only in our community, but also outside of the United States.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Matos. I understand there's enthusiasm for more files, but we do want to move on because we have a lot more ground to cover. Ryan,
I just want to say one thing.
we have to
let him know that I do have two nieces and nephews in the Army, and if we don't take care of the mental health issue first, we're not going to be taking care of the gun violence.
Got it. Okay, on that note, Ryan, let's move on to the next topic, which is reproductive rights.
And I do want to remind candidates that in their 60 seconds, they can, if they would like, as long as it is kept civil, say candidate by name, and we'll allow them to respond appropriately. So, don't be afraid to do that when appropriate, and some more conversation can happen throughout that time. So we are going to move on to reproductive rights and abortions. My question for this topic, we will start with Mr. Goncalves, I believe. Nope, Mr. Dickinson, I'm sorry. Mr. Dickinson, starting with you, the question is, to what extent in a pregnancy do you support an abortion, and are you willing to compromise this position in a GOP-led House?
We have, I was knocking on doors in 1972. I'm an old man when this issue was about to be taken up by the Supreme Court. The people of Rhode Island didn't like the Supreme Court ruling. We have come a long way. It's been a tough issue. It hasn't gotten any better, and it's divided this country. What I do is, if I have an option to influence this issue at all, it will be to try to bring people together. Not easy. And personally, I think an abortion is a terrible thing. It's a tragedy, and there shouldn't be any of them or few of them. The other side of that coin is we can't send anybody to jail. And there's a lot of discussion that needs to take place. I think probably my contribution to it is we don't need any more laws on either side. We need to have a discussion. We need to understand each other. And from my point of view, we need to bring abortion down to an absolute minimum or close to nothing.
So would you support legislation if it were brought before you as a sitting congressman to just basically say no abortions except for rape or incest? Where do you stand on that? What's your ideal piece of legislation you would like to see and to support?
I think at this point, the best thing we could do is not pass any legislation, because once you get started down that road, you don't know where it's going to go.
Is that what you're saying? Leave it up to
frankly,
the states?
At the state level, we would also do well to pass little or no legislation. We have a lot of conversation ahead of us before we do anything that people are going to agree on.
All right, Mr.
And we need to do that if we're not going to tear this country apart.
Thank you. Mr. Goncalves?
I completely disagree with that position. Women should have the right to choose what they do with their own bodies, full stop. I stand in solidarity 1000% with women making their own choices about their own bodies. The Supreme Court's radical decision in Dobbs put millions of women at risk, and it's a death sentence for some of the most vulnerable women, disproportionately women of color. Black women are actually 3.5 times more likely to die in childbirth than white women. And this is a serious issue in our country, and this is not okay. We need to advocate tooth and nail for gender equality. That includes pay equity. It means fighting back when Republicans, launch their systemic attacks on reproductive rights. So I would work fiercely to repeal the Hyde Amendment, support the Women's Health Act, and ultimately fight for the federal codification of Roe v. Wade.
So just to pin down your position, you would basically support an abortion during any time throughout a pregnancy and no compromise?
Correct. Women should have autonomy over their own bodies. And
All
even
right,
as a
great.
male, I will be a strong ally for that in Congress.
Thank you.
Abortion is healthcare. Women's rights are human
right.
rights.
Ms. Matos?
Thank you. So my position is I support a woman's right to choose and make the decision what is best for her health in combination with her doctor. I have a track record of fighting here in Rhode Island to protect abortion rights and to expand a healthcare reproductive services also beyond what we already had, including the EACA, which was very, very important to make sure that those that are in Medicaid and those that have a health insurance that is covered by the state have access to abortion, because that's an equity issue. I don't think that any doctor should be calling their lawyer before they decide what is the best decision they have to make for a woman's health. That decision should be only between that woman and her doctor, and that's it. And the government should not have any interference into that decision.
So do you agree with Mr. Goncalves that it should be, basically reverse the Roe v. Wade decision and say that an abortion can happen anytime during the 9 months, and this is an issue we, shouldn't compromise with the Republicans on?
No compromise in this issue. A woman's health issue is a decision that has to be between her and her doctor. No government should be into that decision.
Ms. Quezada?
Well, my records speak by themselves. I've been supporting women's right to choose since I've been in the Senate. I was the decision, the final vote just a few weeks ago when we passed the Abortion Act in Rhode Island, and it was very close in the Judiciary Committee. I was in 7 votes because it was 6-7, and I have to say to you, women have the right to choose. That's her body. She's the one who had to make that decision. Sometimes for health-wise or for any other decision that our women are going through. Like they said, I think it's a decision between the women and her doctor. It should not be a politic issue. And it's being done this way, but unfortunately, women is the one who got to decide what she want to have a baby or not, and when did she want to have a baby.
So
I would definitely support Women Health Protection Act when I get to Washington, and I'm the person who passed the doula legislation at the same time to help women and support women when they're having a baby. And I would definitely I will support the improving coverage and care for women when they're pregnant when I get to Washington for doula for the entire United States. At the same time that our women have the right to choose, at the same time, I believe women have to have the support what they need when they're having a baby.
So you're going to, I guess, be the third person to say you agree with Mr. Goncalves and Ms. Matos, no compromise.
The compromise, it has to be depending. I don't think any woman is ready to have a baby, to have an abortion when it's almost the baby's coming out. I think when they make it that time, it has to be because it's a health issue, not because of other reasons.
Sure. All right, going back to Mr. Amo.
My apologies, we've been doing this a while. To answer your question directly, I don't support any restrictions. I think this is frankly a tactic or in rhetoric that are used by pro-life opponents of women's rights. No member of Congress should stand between a woman and her doctor, full stop. That is not what I want to go to Washington to do. When the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, they overturned 50 years of precedent and protection for safe and legal abortion. And so I'm thankful to the folks in Rhode Island who led the charge on the EACA, who codified Roe, and that's work that I want to continue in Congress, codifying Roe into federal law, expanding access to abortion in states that have, especially the ones who have taken these radical steps, and frankly have really reduced access to life-saving reproductive health care. And of course, we have to repeal the Hyde Amendment and allow Medicaid and Medicare recipients to receive government funding for reproductive health care. But to go back to your question, I don't support additional intervention by lawmakers in something that is a personal decision between a woman and her doctor.
Gotcha. Ms. Beauté?
I think we're all echoing the same thing here, so I want to be brief with my statement. I think the only person that we're not really in line with is Mr. Dickinson's response in terms of a woman's right to choose. I think even more so now that having a woman in Congress echo that it's a woman's right to choose is where we need to be. I think women speaking on women's rights is where the country needs to head into that space, because we keep getting, guys talking for us. I think we need more women speaking on behalf of our uteruses, to be quite honest. And that is one of the reasons why I'm running for Congress. I don't need another man speaking on my uterus on my behalf. I think women are ready to step up in that regards, and our rights and our voices are necessary in Congress.
Would anyone like to respond to that?
Yeah, I was going to ask Mr. Dickinson, you did get called out by name. If there's anything you want to add before we move on.
Just to be clear, every abortion is a tragedy, and the best thing we can do right now is pass no more laws. And if I'm in Congress, I think I'll be effective in convincing other Congress members that that's something we should not be doing, passing more laws of any kind.
Thank you, Mr.
I do have a
Dickinson.
follow-up.
Go ahead.
I do have a follow-up about the Hyde Amendment, which a couple of people have brought up. But before that, would anybody like to give the last word before we move on to that follow-up? All right.
I do.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Of
I just want to say, so Mr. Dickinson says no more law. What does that exactly mean? Right now, Roe v. Wade just got repealed. And that means that there were protection that we had for abortion coverage that had been taken away. There are states that has passed laws already that take the right of women to get an abortion. And also the laws that are taking the doctors to prison for doing their job. So yes, we do need more laws. We need a law that's going to be nationwide to make sure that the right to access to abortion is protected, and that no state individual can pass any laws to put restrictions in abortion. So yes, we do need more laws.
Mr. Dickinson, 10 seconds to respond, and then we're moving on.
I think that if you go, I'm sorry, I think that if you go down the road, I'm sorry, say again, please.
I was saying, go ahead, you get the last one. We got to move on because time constraints.
Okay, I think that if we go down the road of more laws in Congress, many of the people that you're talking to right now will find that they're not happy with the result.
Okay.
I have a follow-up about the Hyde Amendment. Mr. Goncalves and I believe Mr. Amo said they supported repealing that. So I'm going to go around. We'll start with Ms. Beauté. Do you agree that we need to repeal that?
I'm in agreement.
Okay, great. Mr. Dickinson, I'm assuming you're a no.
We need to think about it, but probably not.
Okay. Up next, we'll go to past Mr. Goncalves, Ms. Matos.
I'm in agreement also.
Okay. And then did everyone else address it, Raymond?
I don't think, Ms. Quezada, did you
Ms.
talk about
Quezada.
Yeah.
Well, the thing that I wanted to say about the abortion was that this is only affected portion, but I do agree with
Okay. I will move it back to Ray for the economy now.
This one I'll keep more open form, and we'll probably cool things down a bit. This one's more of a general question because without a doubt, obviously gun violence and reproductive rights are the top issues, but a lot of people still vote with their wallets and care about the kitchen table issues like how much gas is, how much milk is. So starting off with Mr. Goncalves, as a Congress person, how would you contribute to the improvement of Rhode Island's economy?
Thank you for this question. Many of the biggest issues around the economy are very much intertwined, and the economy is our biggest issue, and that includes income inequality and poverty. I know people in my community who are living on a fixed income, one resident who in fact lives on $25 a month. This is real. The cost of housing, healthcare, childcare is plaguing the state, and we need real solutions to address these issues and lower the cost of these real expenses. Working families are being squeezed, and billionaires and millionaires are getting massive breaks while the rest of us suffer the consequences of their greed. I've got one of the fastest growing districts in the city and in the state. And my focus has been on education, training for real 21st century jobs here in Rhode Island, and also housing. But I also want to quickly pivot to one of the biggest pocketbook issues that is crippling us these days, and that's the cost of healthcare. Healthcare is a human right, it's not a privilege, and some families are a medical tragedy away from bankruptcy. We're the only major country on earth that doesn't guarantee healthcare, and we have some of the highest prices of prescription drugs in the world. We need to end the price gouging from the pharmaceutical industry because that is hurting people every single day, and Congress needs to act.
Thank you, Mr. Goncalves. Next up for the same question, Ms. Matos.
Thank you. One of the things that I want to make sure I do is to fight to protect Social Security, because we have so many individuals, so many people here in Rhode Island that are reliant, dependent on Social Security, and we have to make sure that it's protected. So that's going to be number one. Through my trajectory and my work in the public service, I have worked a lot when it comes to the issues of housing, because that is key in order for someone to be able to have enough left of their paycheck to pay for everything else. When you are burdened by the cost of housing, you don't have any funding available to pay for your medication or to buy food. So I'm going to continue to work at this federal level, also to make sure that we bring more resources back to the state, to make sure that we build more housing to keep up with the demand, and to make sure that we provide more access to assistance for those in fixed income, to have access to vouchers for home, so they can get Section 8 and expand those services. Those are the things that I would be doing when I go to Washington, to make sure that I help the people here in the state of Rhode Island.
Thank you, Ms. Matos. Next up for the same question is Ms. Quezada.
My work said it all. Like I said, my experience, I raised the minimum wage in Rhode Island to $15 an hour. And that's something I would definitely will support, the raising the wage up, the side, there is in Washington at this time. But another thing is we need to secure Social Security for elderly. I represent a district, the people, the working family who are on the fixed income, who don't have any other source of income, and they need to be protected. One of the things I would support and fight for working families. I'm a working family. I was a mother on welfare. I know what it is to be on the system. I know what it is to be living check to check. I'm the person who's been fighting in the State House to make sure that all Rhode Island get a fair, when you work, you need to get paid fair. And that's one of the things that I've been fighting since I've been a senator. Then that's something I would fight when I get to Rhode Island, to make sure we get nationwide $17 an hour in the entire United States. We have to remember the people cannot leave anymore at $725 an hour like it is nationwide. It's unbelievable that we are the most powerful country in the world and we don't have Medicaid for all. We need to provide Medicaid for all. See, Canada can do it. Japan can do it. Germany can do it. Why the United States cannot do it? Then we can do Medicaid for all. There's so many families who cannot leave a marriage because they're afraid they're going to be out of insurance, because they're afraid they're not going to be able to survive, or they're not going to be able to pay the housing, they pay for house and food. I see so many elderly that they have to choose to buy food or get insulin. Then those are the things I will fight when I get to Washington.
Thank you, Ms. Quezada. Next up, Mr. Amo.
Thank you. I think that there's a lot of progress that's been made at the federal level that we just haven't felt here in Rhode Island, right? We see low unemployment rate, we see inflation coming down, but I know because I've spoken to so many of these people, so many of the folks in my family, so many people in the communities I grew up in still are not feeling the progress of Washington. So we've got big pieces of legislation like the infrastructure law. How do we make sure that we are competing for every single bit of federal funding in there to make sure that we're growing jobs here? We've got the Inflation Reduction Act, huge investments in our climate, in projects that are going to protect our country from a resilience standpoint, but also make sure that we have a future where we can thrive. We also see in the Inflation Reduction Act an opportunity to lower the cost of prescription drugs, which we know is so important. You know, the number of conversations that I have with our seniors who are rationing the medications that they are taking and risking their health, but they're doing it because they need to stretch out their dollars further than they want to. So though the protection of Social Security and Medicare is critically important, but we've got to accelerate that progress and make sure that people here at home are feeling the benefits of the big pieces of federal legislation. And my familiarity with those things, both in advocating for the passage of both the infrastructure law, the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS and Science Act, is something that I want to deploy to be effective, to make sure that we are part of the supply chain of the future across critical industries that will define the next several decades.
Thank you, Mr. Amo. Next up, Ms. Beauté.
Yes, I think actually Councilman John Goncalves touched on it because it was something that happened to me recently. Working a good job and I got sick. I had health insurance, but I had a tumor scare and had to have a huge lump removed. And as a result, my health insurance didn't cover it. And I had to take out a huge loan to cover my medical expenses. On top of that, I had a house fire, right? So really traumatic situations where bankruptcy is really at the forefront here. And it's not unique to just me, even though that's speaking to my personal experience. It's happening to everyday Americans. And to be quite honest, this is what's the issue with Congress, right? This is the issue with politics. It's legislation isn't getting there fast enough and we're not being proactive and et cetera, and et cetera. And that's great for all of these plans, but Rhode Islanders need solutions now. One of the things as an AmeriCorps member, working with students is really preparing folks for the future. One of the things that I've done in my tenure and in my expertise in technology is really looking at the future and how we can resolve those problems in real time and not waiting for the problems to hit us and then say, here's a Band-Aid for this, but it doesn't get to you maybe 2, 5, 10 years. But 2 years from now, you'll have homelessness. 5 years from now, you might be suffering bankruptcy and be out in a community in the forest somewhere. And so Rhode Islanders need solutions now. And one of the things that we can do about economy is really investing in our small businesses, really championing those opportunities. Our students are so bright. We have a brain dump situation where a lot of folks, well, a few people here have left Rhode Island to go work elsewhere. We want people to stay in Rhode Island by creating good jobs, sustainable jobs, green jobs, trade jobs, to keep folks in Rhode Island here. Rhode Islanders need results and they need it now. And so politics isn't going to fix this. It's really having someone who understands the breadth and the depth and the expertise necessary to look at the 1-year plan, the 5-year plan, so that we don't have these problems that are in a pipeline, because it's not going to fix grandma's situation at the nursing home. It's not going to fix her ability to have a meal tomorrow, waiting for someone's plan to come to her doorstep 2 years down the line. Rhode Islanders are tired of waiting, and I think we deserve better.
Thank you, Ms. Beauté. Mr. Dickinson, you get the last word on this topic, and then we're going to lightning round.
Okay. Listening to my opponents, I hate to say it, I think we're talking emotional catchphrases. And one of the worst things that I think has happened in the past few months is the passage or the calling of the Inflation Reduction Act, the Inflation Reduction Act. You might as well call it the Puppies and Bunnies Act. Look it up on Wikipedia. It's not about inflation reduction. And I'm kind of tired of this dishonesty. And I'm a Democrat, and I've been a Democrat for a long time. I plan to continue to be one, and I stand for the principles of being of what I believe a Democrat is, which is somebody who believes in protecting Social Security, and we need to institute a real Medicare, a real healthcare system, probably by extending Medicare to everybody. This is going to be tough.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dickinson. Ryan will now start the lightning round section.
Thank you, Raymond. This is personally one of my favorite sections because it's really a great opportunity to get quick responses from you all. So we have 6 questions and we are looking for mostly one word or one sentence answers. So please keep your answers concise. We're going to be starting with Ms. Matos for our first question. I'm looking for a dollar amount for what the federal minimum wage should be in the United States.
Should be 15 minimum.
Ms. Quezada.
17.
Mr. Amo.
15.
Ms. Beauté.
17.
Mr. Dickinson.
I like 15. You can't throw it out like that. The whole economy is past the 15. That people are making 17.
Okay.
But we definitely need to take
Gotcha.
a serious look at that.
Thank you. Mr. Goncalves.
$17 or more to keep up with inflation.
Gotcha. What kinds of Supreme Court reforms would you support? This one will let you elaborate a little bit. Examples could be nothing, or term limits, or expanding or increasing the number of justices. So we'll start with Ms. Quezada.
Term limit. I believe they should have term limits. I believe they should be stand by the ethic that every elected official goes.
Okay. Mr. Amo.
I support Senator Whitehouse's legislation on strict ethics reform and requirements around recusals, and I do also support term limits.
Gotcha. Ms. Beauté.
I think we should also look at the process of it. The process of getting to be in the Supreme Court is one of the things, as well as term limits as well, and having strict guidelines so that way we're not taking advantage on either side.
Mr. Dickinson.
We're lucky to have a Supreme Court. I'm not sure I'd want to change it very much.
Okay. Mr. Goncalves.
I certainly would not support packing it with more members.
Okay. Mr. Goncalves.
Yes, term limits, expanding the court. I also support Senator Whitehouse's legislation on ethics reform.
Gotcha. Ms. Matos.
Ethics reform. I also support Senator Whitehouse legislation on ethics reform.
Anything else about term limits, packing the court, as it's been called, or expanding it? Or no?
Ethics is my priority right now when it comes to the Supreme Court.
Gotcha. Are you in favor or opposed to congressional term limits? We are looking, if you're in favor, for a number of terms. So, Mr. Amo, you start this.
I am in favor. I'm open to a conversation on terms and the number, but because I think it's a broader conversation around what both houses do and how we execute it and grandfather.
Do you want to give me a range? Any number you have in mind?
I think, greater than 3, less than 6. But again, I think we have to think about it in a more robust fashion.
Okay. Ms. Beauté.
Be 3 years or less. You're coming to serve the people. I think that it, 1, holds you accountable. 2, it deters you from being a career politician and holding on to the seat. And 3, you get fresh blood in there and new ideas. So that's really important.
3 years or less, just to make sure I heard you right.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Dickinson.
The Rhode Island legislature and the federal legislature is not doing the job. That's a lot of our problem. Let's not, I would probably support term limits, but let's not get the idea that that's going to solve any problem. It's not. Our problems are elsewhere.
Okay. Do you have a number in mind of terms?
As an experienced legislator, I know that this is the kind of thing that needs to be talked about in discussion, and I'm open-minded.
Fair enough. Mr. Goncalves, same question.
Yes, I support term limits, and we should also have them for the Supreme Court too. I think 12 to 18 years is a reasonable enough time to get things done. So 6 terms in the House, 3 terms in the Senate.
Gotcha. Ms. Matos, same question.
I'm open to term limits, but I will have to work in the details to make sure that it's done properly. I'm concerned with having a term limit that is too set on a fixed date and time, and that put us in a position in which we can have a lot of institutional knowledge just walking out of the door at the same time.
Okay,
So,
Miss Quezada.
I do agree with term limits. I think we said here in Rhode Island, we have term limits for city council, 12 years.
Yeah.
I think 6 term is good for Congress. And that would be 12 years because it's very close. It's only 2 years.
Okay, thank you. Next,
Ryan, I just want to clarify really quickly. So I'm open for a discussion about term limits. I just think that 12 to 18 years is reasonable. So I just want to state that for the record.
thank you. Miss Beauty, for the next question, we're starting with you.
She's switching over to her phone because it was Wi-Fi issues for a moment.
Oh, okay. Let's go to Mr. Dickinson then for this one. The biggest thing holding back Rhode Island is blank. We're looking for one word or a phrase at most.
Rhode Island does not have a systematic means of dealing with its problems, and I would look to the legislature and its bad habits.
Okay, Mr.
I
Goncalves.
served-
Yes, the cost of living, especially housing, and the cost of healthcare, especially for our seniors.
Ms. Matos, same question.
housing and education. It's those two number things.
Ms. Quezada.
I really think Rhode Island is bold when you come to that decision because we're behind on everything. We were behind when we're doing a student to get a constitutional right. We're behind on.
You pick one or two things.
So we were behind.
It's a fill. Ms. Quezada, it's a fill in the blank.
Yeah, bold. I really think we're behind to make decision when it's time to make different decisions.
Okay.
At the last stage
Fair
to
enough.
make the decision.
All right. Back to Mr. Amo, same question, fill in the blank.
I would say the combination of brain drain and costs.
And Miss Beauty, are you back with us?
I am. I would say that we're behind on good, meaningful paying jobs. And so I think that that's the biggest thing that we are really behind on.
All right, Miss Beauty, we're going to start with you now on this one. So would you support or oppose federally legalizing cannabis in the United States?
I would support, and alongside with that, I would look at record expungement for folks who have been criminally arrested for cannabis as well.
Mr. Dickinson?
I think we may have rushed into the cannabis issue a little too quickly, and I'd be reluctant to go that direction.
Gotcha. Mr. Goncalves?
Yes, I support legalizing marijuana, and we should be pardoning anyone convicted for a nonviolent drug offense.
Ms. Matos?
Yes, I support legalizing cannabis at the federal level.
Ms. Quezada?
I support it in Rhode Island. I would support it in Washington.
Mr. Amo?
I think the Biden administration should move swiftly. The president has signed an executive order to deschedule. He needs to accelerate that. And certainly on the equity pieces that a few of my fellow candidates have mentioned, we need to accelerate and make sure that nobody's behind bars for marijuana.
All right, now we're going to go back to Mr. Goncalves, resume our previous order.
Brian, sorry to interject. Just for clarification, Sabina Matos said that she would be support for federal legislation for legalizing cannabis, but you didn't clarify with the criminalization of legal for folks who had marijuana and sold marijuana and have nonviolent offenses. Are you opposed to expunging their record? I just wanted to get clarification.
No, thank you for the opportunity to clarify. I will definitely support making sure that we decriminalize anyone that has been accused and in jail because of non-violent offense that are related to drug offense like marijuana, cannabis. Yes, thank you.
And like I said, I support it in Rhode Island, and we have the same legislation in Rhode Island. That's why I said I would support it.
Great. Okay, let's go to Mr. Goncalves. This is a fun one. What is your favorite restaurant in the 1st Congressional District?
I'm going to go with Ray Rickman's response to his favorite place to grab coffee, and that's the gas station on Wickenden Street. No, I'm just kidding. But it's actually Plant City.
Nice. Ms. Matos?
So I have to say one of the favorites one is Apsara. I will have to say I love going to Apsara. Yeah.
Gotcha. Ms. Quezada?
The Portuguese restaurant on Waterman Avenue, Ditch, I don't know how to pronounce it well, and is Waterman Street, and I've been there many times, and they do the best fried chicken, fried fish I ever tried.
Gotcha. Mr. Amo?
This switches often because we have a lot of great restaurants, but right now it's by water and Warren.
Miss Beauty?
I have too many, but right now it'll be the White Horse Tavern. They have an amazing beef Wellington, and the stories are wonderful there. It's one of the oldest taverns in our nation.
Yes. Mr. Dickinson?
Okay, this is a trick question to catch people that don't live in the first district, but I would have to say Brick Alley Pub in terms of what I'm most likely to go to. White Horse Tavern is excellent.
We would never ask trick questions. Let's go to the environment now. Thank you all. Those were very good, quick answers. We appreciate it. You guys definitely passed the test in terms of answering the lightning round questions in a reasonably short manner. So I appreciate that. We are now moving on to the environment. This is going to be our second to last official topic. And I will say we are going to move a little bit quicker through these next topics. And our international topic is actually going to be more like 2 more rapid fire questions, just so people know. But this one, we're back to our 60-second broader question, which is what are the United States' biggest problems when it comes to combating climate change, and what are the best solutions to address the crisis? So we will start, I believe, with Ms. Matos on this one.
Thank you. So climate change is a big issue for the United States, but I think one of the things that we have to do is to make sure that we include the communities that are being affected, especially the communities that are being affected the most, and most of the time has been left out of the conversation. I can tell you through my experience working in the local government with organizations like the Woonasquatucket River Watershed Council, they have been doing a great work making sure that we educate our communities about the impact that climate is having on their day-to-day life, to make sure that they understand, especially as we just saw recently with the rains that we're getting and how our communities are getting flooded. So they're helping our residents to understand how their life is being affected, how things are changing and moving forward. We're gonna continue to see this type of number of flooding situation happening in our community. So I think that's the number one threat that we have right now, is the change in the climate and how it's affecting our coastal community. And that includes also rivers. And that's why I wanted to make sure to mention the Woonasquatucket River Watershed Council, because sometimes we forget about that when we're talking about climate change and how that is affecting, especially poor communities in our state and in the country.
Ms. Quezada?
Well, it's many things that we need to do on climate change. We're seeing it now. Every time it rains, we have to close the highways. We have to close many roads in Rhode Island. People cannot travel. Then we had a big issue with Rhode Island. It's an island, and if we don't do something soon, we're going to have biggest issues. Then I would definitely help to pass Green New Deal at the state level. Climate, civilian corporate, and just that when I came to Rhode Island, I came from a third world country where climate is not one conversation. And I learned I support many legislation at the state house when we're talking about climate change. And it's something we need to invest, and we need to really bring real resources to Rhode Island to prevent, especially in Providence. We can get any flood issue anytime in Rhode Island, here in Providence. Then is we need to bring the resources to Rhode Island to prevent and to help people when they go through climate change situation.
Thank you. Mr. Amo, same question about climate change.
Thanks. I think we have a historic opportunity right now with the Inflation Reduction Act to take advantage of the resources there, whether it's the consumer benefits that we'll have on whether tax rebates for installing a heat pump, getting an electric vehicle, to the big systemic things that we can address, like here in Rhode Island, accessing funding for coastal resilience. But we have to anchor it in proximity. I often talk about our work on climate, both in terms of our challenges, but how we can make those understandable to people. I anchor it in people, projects, and places, because in the abstract, people are aware that we are experiencing extreme weather. Our energy prices are surging. We're having real challenges, but it's not connected to their day-to-day. And with this opportunity, we can create thousands of jobs here in Rhode Island, whether it's in the expansion of our wind energy capacity, to the work that we can do on urban forestry, or making sure that we are modernizing our buildings, investing in solar responsibly. So I think our biggest challenge is making sure that we're all on the same page. But we're at this moment, this historic moment, that we need to take advantage of, and we have a lot of tools in our toolbox, and we'll certainly need to work against Republican attempts to repeal pieces of the Inflation Reduction Act. But here in Rhode Island, if we can get together, we have a tremendous opportunity to be part of a clean energy supply chain for the future.
Thank you, Ms. Beauté.
I think that we're behind. Europe has been ahead of us on this for over a decade now. I was quite disappointed that the Green New Deal did not pass. And honestly, this is why we need more folks who understand science in Congress. It's, we're allowing our future to be dictated by politicians who don't understand science, who don't understand technology, who don't understand research, who are not fact-based, but who rely on pundits and waiting on the last moment, the last second, to be able to be responsive. And which is why we're experiencing the torrential rains that we're experiencing, shorter summers, longer winters, and then they keep getting mixed with the seasons. And so one of the things that I really want us to champion here is being more innovative in our solutions in Rhode Island. We have an opportunity to not just create jobs, but create business opportunities here. And how do we leverage our parking spaces? By having solar panels. This is an opportunity to be innovative with the technology and the forces that we have here, and then being able to make sure that Rhode Islanders benefit from that. And more so, the urban communities that have been deforested to create highways and remove trees. How do we make sure that our parks are protected? We're seeing that in Pawtucket, even more so with Morley Field that's being turned into a parking lot. How do we make sure that federal legislation protects our green spaces in our urban communities that are constantly suffering? And so we need to be proactive and not reactive. And that's the issue that we're facing in Congress. We don't fix that by sending more politicians. We fix that by sending people who understand technology, who understand science, and who value research more so.
Thank you. Up next, Mr. Dickinson.
I think I'm listening to a bunch of politicians railing against politicians, and it's a serious problem. They're absolutely right about that. If I take it from the point of view of a voter, I want people who've got skin in the game. I want somebody that's proved their point. I was personally very concerned about the climate change issue and rising sea levels many years ago, which is the reason that I built the first solar heated house in Rhode Island and the first solar heated house in New England, installed the first heat pump in a house, and 100 more with other builders. There's real answers to these questions, and I think that we should go down the road of taking it seriously, respecting the issue, finding not politicians, but actual people that get things done and know how to build a solar house. We can do that. What we need to do now is to avoid the problem of people who say, I like stone walls, but I don't like wind towers. Well, I had a little storefront selling windmills many, many years ago because we had to start somewhere. Today, you can call Mark DePasquale and get a wind tower in your backyard if the town will let you. That's the issue. Voters have to make sure that the permitting is available. The technology is coming. It will come when it comes, and it's coming very fast, faster than most of us expected. So we have to encourage it and allow it. And I think that's our biggest challenge.
Thank you. And last but not least, Mr. Goncalves.
Sure, climate change is the greatest existential crisis on our planet, whether it's the heat waves that some of my colleagues mentioned, hurricanes, rising sea levels, addressing our infrastructure, or the floods we saw recently. And we need to use every tool in our arsenal to address climate change. I think we need to lower energy bills, transform our energy system to 100% renewable energy, and create good paying jobs in the process. It's why I've been on record supporting the Green New Deal legislation for years, endorsing it for years. It's why our campaign doesn't accept any fossil fuel money or corporate PAC money. We need to stand up to big oil companies that are harming our environments and disproportionately impacting our frontline communities, whether it's the right to charge law that I was the lead sponsor on, to leverage federal funds from the bipartisan infrastructure law on electric vehicles, being a lead sponsor on trying to expand composting citywide, addressing single-use plastics. If you elect me to Congress, I will fight for the most aggressive climate change legislation. It's what I've done at the local level. It's exactly what I will do at the federal level.
Thank you, Mr. Goncalves. I had not planned to ask any follow-ups for this topic, so I want to let everyone see if you have the last word and react to any of the other candidates and what they said. If not, we can move on to international, but does anyone want to?
I have a further thought.
Sure, quickly.
I think that probably one of our biggest mistakes is talking about outlawing gas stoves. That will come, but I think that there's this overzealous approach that people take sometimes. We're getting there. Elon Musk is embarrassing Mercedes into building electric cars. This is what we should be doing. We should encourage that direction.
Anyone
and
else?
Don't forget, you can call Mark DePasquale and get a 375-foot wind tower in your backyard if you want to.
Anybody else? All right. Raymond, I will pass it back to you for the 2 quick questions on our international topic.
Going to keep these ones very brief. The first one, on the day that we're taping this, Wednesday, July 19th, is also when Israel's president, Isaac Herzog, addressed a joint session of Congress. A few Democratic lawmakers had boycotted his speech. Starting with you, Ms. Quezada, if you were in Congress today, would you have stayed for that speech or joined the boycott?
I enjoy.
Join the boycott?
No, I will
stay. All right, sorry, it cut out for a second there. Next up, same question, Mr. Amo.
I would be in attendance at the speech.
Ms. Beauté?
I would be in attendance. I don't think that boycotting changes the narrative. I think having a discussion on how we work with Israel and Palestine to resolve their discrepancies is the better approach.
Mr. Dickinson?
We're not working hard on that issue, but can you, just for myself and other listeners, what's the issue? What's the speech about?
He was addressing a joint session of Congress. I believe it was to celebrate the 75th anniversary of Israel, if I have that correct.
Okay, just a birthday party.
Well, it got controversy because a few of the progressive lawmakers decided to boycott the speech, which is why we're asking the question.
I wouldn't minimize it to a birthday party. Celebrating sovereignty of a nation is something that should be celebrated and commemorated. And Israel is one of the nations that for generations, upon their history, has been facing extinction because other nations have wanted to wipe it out. And so being able to commemorate your independence and have a nation is something worth celebrating. And I think that calling it a birthday party is dismissive and offensive to the Jewish community.
No offense intended. And by the way, I believe in sticking around to hear what people have to say. So I would probably not be boycotting anything.
Got it.
Thank you.
And Mr. Goncalves?
I would not boycott it. We released a statement on this. I agree with a two-state solution, and this issue is very complex, but to not listen and to boycott a speech is not something that we should be doing as members of Congress.
Ms. Matos?
I will state Israel is the strongest democracy in that region and is our partner, and I will stay there.
Sticking with you, Ms. Matos, the other question I had, recently the United States decided to send cluster munitions, also known as cluster bombs, to Ukraine. Where do you stand on that decision?
I support Ukraine. I support that decision. We have to make sure that we provide Ukraine with every support that they need because they're fighting for democracy. They're fighting for us. So I do support that decision.
Mr. Goncalves?
Yes, I support the position of our intelligence community and our president. If elected to Congress, I hope to be a part of building our standing in foreign affairs and international politics under the direction of President Biden to strengthen NATO, to ultimately foster peace and security in the world, and also to rehab America's image and standing in the world.
Mr. Dickinson?
You know, some of these issues are complicated. I heard that we're sending cluster bombs because we ran out of other artillery. That's a mistake. I don't know about the specifics, and I think whenever you're dealing with military issues, you have to be very careful. There are people who know more about it than you do, and your first job is to find out.
So undecided on where you stand on that decision?
I don't like cluster bombs, but on the other hand, I haven't been briefed on the issue.
Got it. Ms. Beauté?
I think this is the one agreement that perhaps me and Mr. Dickinson will have. I do not support sending cluster bombs to Ukraine, regardless of the situation. I think it's irresponsible and very disappointing. The damages there are going to be longstanding, and the people who will suffer the repercussions of what that will be grave. And so I'm quite disappointed in the Biden administration for doing that, and I think it's grossly irresponsible. I think that there's other technology that we could use as a support to Ukraine.
Mr. Amo?
I support the president's decision here. I know that this was not easy, and I think that, you know, we have seen the president unite the world and our allies against Vladimir Putin's illegal and you know, inhumane attack on Ukraine, and this is certainly not a preferred outcome. But this is an existential conflict that requires us to be there until the last possible moment. And unfortunately, Putin's aggression is something that we have to respond to and make sure that we protect Ukraine and the Ukrainian people.
Ms. Quezada?
Well, I disagree. And so I do agree the United States should be helping Ukraine, but I think what they said wasn't right for them to be sent. I think we have to make sure that whatever we send it to them, they know how to use it, and they're going to be able to help them, not to do the opposite. And I think at this time, I do disagree that they shouldn't not send that to them.
That was all the questions both Ryan and I had. Ryan's now going to moderate the part for the closing statements.
Thank you, Raymond. We are going to be starting closing statements with Mr. Amo. We will give each candidate about 60 seconds for this. This is, of course, your chance to, you know, cover anything that you haven't so far and get your last word out to voters and clear the air about any issues. So, Mr. Amo, I will start with you here.
Thank you so much. And once again, Ryan and Ray, thank you so much for driving this discussion. And thank you to all of the other candidates who were able to be on this. I'm running because I truly believe Rhode Islanders need and deserve a congressperson who can be effective from day one and be there for the big fights ahead. My experience working for Governor Raimondo, working for President Obama, and working for President Biden, where I, wasn't the front person. I wasn't, elected, but I was there when politicians spoke, I acted. And time again, I had the opportunity to serve people across this country, including people in Rhode Island. And we need someone who can effectively help us tap into the resources available from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and Inflation Reduction Act. Before I left, I was implementing those things at the White House, and also be an effective leader in all the various pieces of the role, the convening, the advocacy, the constituent services. But we also have really tough issues facing our nation. I'm ready to lead on preventing gun violence because I've had the horrible experience of having to help communities heal after mass shootings. I'm ready to lead on protecting Social Security and Medicare because in the White House, I've seen when you can bring people together to get things done and provide vital services, it can make all the difference. And we need experienced leaders across the board. And I say to folks often that this is a job interview that Rhode Islanders are going through right now. And I put forward the experience and my credentials as evidence of my ability to serve at a high level and work hard in every single facet of my life. I've done so, and I will not ever let up for the people of the 1st Congressional District. So again, thank you so much for having me. And I am very excited at the road ahead, and I know we can do so much together. Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Beauté.
Rhode Island, I want to say that this has been a journey of a lifetime that we have been struggling through together. And it's not going to change unless we do something different, very different and very drastic. And we don't fix our problems by sending the same issues back into DC. In fact, that is the issue. We know that politicians are really designed to just be in conflict with one another, and it's at our detriment. It's at the detriment of our students who are in failing schools. It's at the detriment of our economy, where we are feeling the pinch at the gas station, getting bread, getting eggs. We're still feeling it in our healthcare, where we don't have universal healthcare and to be able to cover our expenses. We are struggling, we are suffering. And why is that? Because our poverty has been profitable, and it is allowed for talking points and speeches and no actual attainable results. And the only way that we change that is by changing our approach and our methodology. And so I'm asking you to bet on Beauté, to really look down the line and look at all of the options that you have and to try something different. Because what that does now, by electing me and sending me to Congress, you send a ripple effect to the nations that people like us, people who have come from public schools, who have raised by single moms, who are working paycheck to make ends meet, have a voice in Congress. Not connections, not big dollars, not big networks. People like us. We need working class citizens in Congress to fix our working class issues. Millionaires won't do that. Politicians won't do that. We can do that. And so voting starts August 16th. I hope to have you to bet on Beauté.
Thank
Join
you.
up.
Mr. Dickinson.
A lot of topics here. Big problem is that Congress is not listening to you at all. And all the other people running for Congress around the country in a year or a year ago are saying exactly the same thing that all these other candidates that I've been listening to are saying. They're all qualified. And I brought up the point that we had misnamed something, which is the Inflation Reduction Act. It's an environmental act, and it might even have some good things in it. But don't lie to us. I think there's too much of that. And for the voters, we've got to be a little more careful in what we believe and what we accept. Of course, we want Social Security as a Democrat. Of course, we need universal health care, long overdue. Electronic privacy not being brought up. One issue probably more important even than climate change is how about nuclear destruction? And that's something that I'm going to have to talk to the president about if I ever get a chance to. We're ignoring a lot of these issues. And why are we? Because our Congress doesn't care. And the voters have to hold them to it. And I will not lie to you.
Thank you. Mr. Goncalves.
Thank you, Ray, and thank you, Ryan, for the opportunity. Thank you for all the other candidates for a robust discussion today. Again, my name is John Goncalves, and I'm so thankful to be in this fight. I'm running for Congress to be a fierce advocate for the people of Rhode Island. Many people in Rhode Island are struggling. People are worried about education. They're worried about the cost of living, housing, jobs, healthcare. They're worried about reproductive rights. They're worried about our climate crisis. We need a strong voice in Washington. Republicans in Congress want to cut Social Security and Medicare. I would vote to expand them. We need to end the polarization in this country, the hate and extremism domestically, the terrible anti-Semitism, the anti-gay, anti-immigrant, anti-people of color sentiments from the far right are a true threat to our democracy. And MAGA and extremist Republicans would rather ban books instead of banning assault weapons to keep our communities safe. Republicans in the Supreme Court are rolling back progress for women, the LGBTQ community, and people of color. And we need to do something about it. I've shown that I can get things done at a local level as a two-term city councilman and also in my day job as an elementary school teacher, where I'm so lucky to inspire the next generation of leaders. I want a world for my students and children where they can succeed and live in an equitable society that affirms their identity. I'm fighting to be a voice for the voiceless. I grew up in Rhode Island. I face the same struggles many Rhode Islanders face, and I know that I can be a fierce advocate for the people of Rhode Island at a federal level. We're building a multi-generational, multiracial coalition that I believe wants to see a new kind of leader in Washington. So please send me a teacher to Congress. Join us in our fight. Follow us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at John G. PVD, and join our movement at johngforcongress.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, Ms. Matos.
Thank you, Ray and Ryan, for this opportunity. And I want to thank all of you that are watching at home or at work, whatever you are right now. Thank you for tuning in and for being part of this process. I came to this country as I was 20 years old, as an adult, have to learn the language. And I have been given great opportunity in this nation. I'm running for Congress because I want to make sure that those opportunities are still available for generations to come. There are so many things that are at risk right now. My daughter could have less rights than I do, and that I cannot stand for. Right now, the Supreme Court has been making decisions that are taking away rights for LGBTQ, for people of color. And right now, we have to make sure that we have a fighter in Washington, and also a fighter that understands what it takes to work in collaboration. Someone that has the experience of being in the local government already, in an elected body, working with my colleagues to get things done. Speaking with those that sometimes we don't have anything else to agree on, but agreeing on what is important for the voters and for the people of the state of Rhode Island, for the people, for the nation. That is what you get from me, with me, when you send me to Washington. You know me. You have seen my work for more than 12 years at the local level and as lieutenant governor. I'm going to Washington to fight for women's rights, for LGBTQ rights, to fight for ban on assault weapons, and to make sure that when my kids go to school, I'm not worried about, is this today going to be the day when I get the phone call? I ask you to send me to Washington because I'm going to be a fighter to make sure that we have Medicare for all, and also to make sure that we're protecting our rights. So I'm asking you to vote for me and send me to represent Rhode Island 1st Congressional District in Washington. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Quezada.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. It's been very nice to be having this discussion this afternoon. I'm Senator Quezada, and I'm running for Congress because I'm a fighter. I went from the Senate floor, from the factory floor to the Senate floor, from the welfare office to the state office. And I can tell you, nothing been given to me. I fight for everything I had in life. I've been fighting for Rhode Island for the last 8 years, passing legislation that matter to people in Rhode Island, like the minimum wage, doula, the right to turning natural hair, fighting for banks to make them responsible when they take your house away, fighting for people to make sure that our children are safe when they go to school or go to the movie theater. I want to fight for our children who are dying, more young people are dying of overdose than ever before, even more than gun violence. We need to do something about it. We need to fight for our children. We need to make our children safe. We need to make our family, working family, somebody who really understands you, because I was there with you. I'm not somebody who comes from a rich family or connected political. I'm somebody who fight for everything, and I will fight for you like the same way I've been fighting for you for the last 8 years I've been. I give you the opportunity to represent you. I'm asking for your support. I'm asking for your vote on September 5th. Vote for Ana Quezada for Congress, and I can promise you that you will not, I will represent you with the best of my knowledge. Thank you for the opportunity, and please get in touch with anaquezadaforcongress.com if you want to help us, or you want to support us, or you want to donate to our campaign. Thank you, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you all. Raymond?
That is the end of our second and final session for this forum. Thank you to everyone who participated in both sessions, and thank you to all who tuned in, whether it be the audio version or the video version. For those who live in the district, August 6th is the voter registration deadline. August 15th is the mail ballot application deadline for the primary. Early voting for this primary goes on from August 16th to September 5th. Election day is on September 5th. And additional information regarding this primary can be found on vote.sos.ri.gov. If you haven't already, please click the subscribe button down below and the post notification bell icon to the right of it. And if you're tuning in on Ryan's podcast, click the follow button on wherever you get your podcasts and listen to his version on. We hope to do more forums and debates like this in the future. For Ryan Lukowicz, I'm Raymond Bakari. Have a great afternoon.